Good morning. Magdala, the town of two synagogues, contemporaneous in the first century, unheard of until before the end of the year. Amazing. This is the first synagogue that was found in Magdala with frescoes and mosaics. That was also unheard of. And then the Magdala stone there in the center of the floor, which was also unheard of. And now we have a second synagogue in Magdala, contemporaneous to this one. So Magdala is a town of two synagogues from the first century, before temple destruction. You know, this is absolutely off the charts. So here we have this beautiful mosaic, Pompeii style. The new synagogue doesn't have fresco. Well, it has some fresco remnants in spots, but not the type of the amount we have here. And it doesn't have mosaic. It does have a row of seats. We have 3 rows of seats, but their row of seats is plastered. Ours is not. You can see there's plaster on the pillars. And they also have a little room down on the southwest corner. You see where that fresco is there? Behind that, there's a small little room there with a special mosaic floor. Maybe I'll show you that. And then we also have a very clear, big teaching room, a Beit Midrash probably. And this is highly esteemed by scholars and experts that this also exists here. And so this was found as we were preparing to build accommodations for guests, pilgrims, tourists here in Galilee. And now we have a second synagogue. And I'm just bringing you around here this morning for 2 reasons. Number 1, there's no sign of the sun appearing. And number 2, the gospel talks about synagogues in Galilee today. So there, I'm going to show you that one there close up. And I'll show you where the other one is, but I'm not going to get there. Our visitor center entrance here is locked. It would be possible I could walk there in 3 or 4 minutes, but then I couldn't really go in to see it either because it's all muddy from the rain. Hey, look at this sun going to... And the light shone in the darkness in the Galilee of the Gentiles. That's our gospel today. This is the market area. This is also, there are 7 shops opening in here to the main street. I don't think I ever detailed that with you. We can do that sometime. And they all have a back room, most of them. And some of them have water, access to water. The structures show that was the case. And over here we found, or Carlos, one of the volunteers, found the sword, the famous 1st century Roman sword. Now if we look over here, you can see that line of trees coming down. It means there's water there underneath, obviously. And then over here, let me find the spot. Can't see very well from here. I was over there showing a visiting priest the area, but I think, let me see. I think it's more like straight behind that pinkish sign there. And that's where the other synagogue is. It's basically the same size as the one we found here in Magdala in 2009. And now this discovery in 2021, 12 years later, of another synagogue is super significant. So you can see expectations for sunrise this morning are pretty low. We were promised rain and it doesn't seem to come. It promises, 60% rain chance and 70% rain chance. And yesterday it was promised at 5 o'clock and it didn't come at 6, and then barely at 7 there was just a few drops, and then it didn't really rain, but I think it rained last night some. And the prognosis today also is just there's a couple of spots of rain promised. You have all this cloud, but it's not producing rain. So but this darkness also kind of fits to the gospel passage today. Just for clarification, I'm going to follow the the readings of the days after the Epiphany. Since yesterday in most of the world the Epiphany was celebrated, the visit of the Magi to Jesus, then this is a major marking point, because then the daily readings switch to Jesus' public life beginning in Galilee. And on Sunday we'll have the baptism in the Jordan. So it's the beginning of the public life. So we're already into the public life gospel accounts, and that will continue then until the beginning of Lent. But there's still some prayer features that carry the Christmas awareness, the contemplation of Christmas, right up to the 2nd of February. And that means then that there's still like that flavor of Christmas, of the birth of Jesus, that mystery of the incarnation, until 40 days after the birth. That's the logic there in these biblical numbers. Sometimes we don't have a direct connection to them in our sensitivity, but those were numbers that meant so much to people in ancient times. And they became like units of measurement, like we would measure a week or a month. A 40-day unit was also very significant. Good, well, here we are, and the readings have quite a punch in them today, so let's look at them. I'm wondering if you get to see the readings there while we're doing the live, as it's in the post, on the Facebook post, but maybe they're not accessible to you while you're on the live. Maybe if somebody can do that, then maybe you can alert the others, because it might make it more interesting in a way, more easier to follow, to switch your eye occasionally from the scenery to the reading. So the first reading is from the first letter of St. John. So this is like among the latest writings of the New Testament. And so the church already has quite a bit of a track record on the ground. The communities are growing around the Mediterranean. And obviously all the challenges that come with a community living a new style of life, and living and understanding a teaching that obviously is in contrast with the existing worldviews and the dominant worldviews. And then it's not just a teaching that's just a teaching about ideas, it's about a lifestyle and a way of life. Because Christianity isn't a philosophy, and it's not a worldview just like that. It's really the person of Jesus. This is key to Christianity. It's about the person of Jesus and our attitude to him. This is key. So it's deeply about a personal relationship, and through that personal relationship, a personal relationship with the three persons of the Trinity, and really then with all of humanity and all of creation. So then it implies a worldview, but it's much more than a worldview. And so the language is very strong about the acceptance of Jesus, or non-acceptance or rejection of Jesus. And also about the new spirit that Jesus brings of forgiveness and fraternity and service is in contrast to a worldview of dominance and of violence, of people, law of the jungle, really, like the most powerful dominate. And that dynamic will continue to the present day, because to live according to Jesus' spirit of life is very much in contrast to a lot of things that are going on in the world today, like human trafficking. That's impossible to to reconcile with Jesus' Spirit. And violence is impossible to reconcile. Doesn't mean that some of Jesus' disciples won't do these things, because the battle isn't just between people, it's inside our own hearts. And then sometimes the opposition to Jesus' teaching becomes very concrete, and very concrete people, very concrete institutions. It can become very tangible, very poignant, very powerful, very hostile. And then in order to understand this first reading, it will be good to remember something that we have in Paul's writings. And he says that remember that the battles we have are not just with earthly forces. The battles we have are between heavenly forces, spiritual forces. And in that sense as well, when we see this concept of Antichrist, that's important to keep in mind. And it's not just something that's like you might see in some movies and some literature about these things. It's like not just some big beast. It's spiritual. It doesn't have a physical face. It could use physical faces, but it's a spiritual reality that is happening at many levels and inside ourselves. Like when we have a big surge of revenge, and that leads us to actions coherent with that revenge, then we're operating not with Christ. When we follow patterns that go against the commandments of goodness and mercy and truthfulness and honesty and respect for people, their properties, their families, then when we do things, when we speak badly, we are also in that sense opening ourselves up to action of the Antichrist. There's no harmless sin. And it's the battle and challenge of the world. And we're involved. We're very involved, all of us, every one of us. And that's why every good act matters. And no good act is indifferent, and no bad act either. Every action we do, every act we take, all of this has a huge impact in the world. And that's why saints, even if they're not known or if they're rejected, everything they do, every act of love, every act of kindness, every act of patience, every act of service, every act of sharing God's love is part of the victory and will have its reward forever. So in this light, I think we can read the sometimes it's over dramatized in the sense of sensational dramatization, the whole thought about the Antichrist, but actually it's just pervades society. This Jesus asked, are you with me or against me? And we want to be with him, but we also have that fight going on inside ourselves. And then we need grace and help. We need his help. So we can't do it on our own. It's not about our muscle, our spiritual muscle, our spiritual savvy, our drive, our capacities also, because God gave them to us. But it's especially about being united to God's grace and his work through us. And all the wonderful things God can do through us. And so then let's go to the gospel for a few minutes, because that's exciting where we're standing right now. Can you imagine these lines of the gospel? Let me get there. I wanted to do something in the psalm there as well. Let's do just that for a second. I will give you all the nations for an inheritance. And this is very interesting, because even though the language is still of possession and ownership and all of this. And yesterday we had the kings coming in veneration and adoring, bringing their treasures. This language of the Old Testament is very interesting in the light of the New Testament, because how did Jesus get all the nations in possession? By dying on Calvary and rising from the dead. All the nations of the world, all over the world, they just, it would be incalculable the millions of people that follow Jesus. And if we go back through history for 2,000 years, millions and millions and millions of people, tens of millions from all over the world, every race, every land, every tongue, every culture, every age group, every sociological category. I will give you all the nations for an inheritance. So that psalm is very powerful there in the heels of the Epiphany. And then let's go to the Gospel. So now it's also about the nations, because it's Galilee of the Gentiles. The Gentiles are, gens is the Latin word for a tribe or for a nation. Gens, Gens. And the Gentiles then are all the different nations, the people of all the different gens, of all the different tribes, of all the different nations. So that's the language. So when Jesus heard that John had been arrested, he withdrew to Galilee. He left Nazareth and went to live in Capernaum, and Capernaum is just across here. So he withdrew to Galilee. Which Galilee? Our Galilee, right here. And just like, go straight in the line there now. You're going to have Capernaum behind those bushes about 4 miles from here. Maybe less as the crow flies, and we have lots of crows here. He left Nazareth and went to live in Capernaum by the sea in the region of Zebulun and Naphtali. These are the two tribal areas of of northern Israel. That what had been said through Isaiah the prophet might be fulfilled. Land of Zebulun, land of Naphtali, the way to the sea. This is the Via Maris. That's the route connecting the Mediterranean way back to the west there. The route connecting the Mediterranean to Damascus, really, and that would be then at the foot of Mount Hermon, across there, alongside, and through Capernaum. Actually, Capernaum is on the way of the sea. Beyond the Jordan, and the Jordan runs from the north here down to the south. Actually, there's some nice light down there now, but it's not sunrise. Sunrise is long gone, but it's lightened up there. And then the Jordan goes down there, all the way down to the Dead Sea, not too far from Jerusalem, near Jericho. Land of Zebulun and land of Naphtali, to the way of the sea beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles, the people who sit in darkness have seen a great light. On those dwelling in a land overshadowed by death, light has arisen. From that time on, Jesus began to preach and say, "Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand." He went around all of Galilee, teaching in their synagogues. And that's why I went over to the synagogue at the beginning of this presentation, proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and curing every disease and illness among the people. His fame spread to all of Syria, which is right across from us. Syria is just across there, behind the Golan. The Golan is principally part of Syria. His fame spread to all of Syria, and they brought to him all who were sick with various diseases and racked with pain, those who were possessed, lunatics and paralytics, and he cured them. And great crowds from the Galilee, from the Decapolis, that's this whole area then, in the Hellenistic times, the Decapolis, 10 cities, from down to Bet Shean, the capital, across to Amman, the present-day capital of Jordan, and Jerash, these cities, a lot of them in Jordan today. Jerusalem and Judea, and from beyond the Jordan followed him. So there we have Jesus now in the beginning of his public ministry, and you have all these people from different peoples coming to follow. And already that path of the Gentiles is opened up, and people have followed the kings, the 3 wise men, the Magi, to adore him. People, thank you for joining us here this morning, in this dark, murky morning. But it's also beautiful, it's fresh, it's very fresh air, little chilly, but it's okay. It's, I mean, it's not chilly for you guys. A lot of you guys have snow. It's about 13 degrees Celsius, so what's that, 2.5, 9, 2 is 18, 23. It's well, mid 50s almost. Okay, so see you later, alligators. Let's do this little traditional selfie moment. See you, God bless you. Thank you for joining, thank you for sharing, spreading the good news.